Hi friends, Cole Chance, Yoga TX, thanks for joining me. And today I wanted to tell you all a little bit about how I got into yoga. And I actually went to my first yoga class at a drug and alcohol treatment center in California about 10 years ago. I'd never taken yoga before. I was a pretty hardcore partier. Partier puts it lightly, I was an alcoholic. And I found myself in yet another treatment center, and there was a yoga class there, or we did yoga every day. But the first day I was laying in yoga class and I was just hating myself. I ended up in another treatment center. I hated the way I felt physically. There's a lot of shame attached to addiction, and I just really had a lot of self-loathing. And this yoga teacher was leading a yoga class, and I remember the room was like a giant greenhouse kind of, and there was lights coming in, and we were in the redwoods. It was beautiful. Everything was beautiful. The teacher's voice was beautiful, the environment was beautiful, and everything was gorgeous except for me. Like, I felt so awful and gross and smelly and everything that you can think about. Like, I did not fit in that environment. It just felt so secluded and very closed off. And I remember that the teacher was talking in this angelic voice, and she had said how she was a heroin addict for 20 years and all of these things. And I remember thinking, yeah, right. Like, did not believe her at all. Like, she could not understand what I feel like. There's no way. But anyway, I take yoga through this treatment, through this 30 days. And I remember thinking that if I ever get my life sorted out, this is what I want to do. I want to do what that lady's doing. And I never thought that I would. At that time, I kept going into treatments and to hospitals and detoxes just because I wanted to feel better. I didn't want to quit. I wanted to feel better, and then I wanted to get back out and find a way to do it right. Like, I wanted to learn how to be a normal drinker. And I was obsessed with that for a really long time. So I didn't get sober then. It took me many years later, but I kept going back. And every little bit of sobriety that I got, though, I would go to a yoga class first thing. And I would feel good, and I would feel strong, and I'd feel so good and so strong that I would buy a bottle of wine. And it was a mess. You know, I was really in a bad place. But yoga continued to be my barometer. So instead of like asking me, you know, how have you been doing, Cole, with the drinking? You could have asked me, when's the last time you've been to a yoga class? That's kind of the way that it was for me. So if I was going regularly or even semi-regularly, I was doing pretty well. And if not, then you had reason to worry. But towards the very end, I had, you know, this is probably 7 years later. I'm 3 years sober now. So about 7 years later, I had one of the worst relapses that I'd ever had. About 6 months of really hell, and almost didn't make it. Was going to die soon. It was very severe, and I somehow pulled myself out of some darkness, and I made my way into a yoga class here in Austin, Texas. Crawled my way in, and I unrolled my mat, and I got into child's pose, and I just started bawling, like right in the middle of class, of this big class of lots of people. And you know, my mat, like I said, my mat was my barometer, and really my mat symbolized hope for me, because if I could make it back to my mat, then maybe I was going to be okay. But all of those months and days that I never made it, I couldn't unroll it, I couldn't like come in and listen to myself and be with myself, the farther away I was from that, the more dangerous it was. So I made it back to my mat, and I was so scared. Like, I knew that if I went back out, I might not have another chance. I knew I had to stay where I was, but I was also hopeful, and I was terrified, and I was all of these things at once. And like I said, I just exploded, and I'm sure everyone who was in that class remembers. I was a total mess, and I've actually been sober since then. I have not had drugs or alcohol since then. I decided that I was going to stay on my mat. I actually did my yoga teacher training at Wanderlust here in Austin, Texas, and I cannot say it was easy. It was very, very hard. My whole life, alcohol and drugs dictated my whole life since I was about 13, 14. So it's the only thing I knew. That was my mask. So I had my whole identity ripped away from me, and it was terrifying. But slowly, I started to find myself, and I found myself. I had a great therapist, amazing family, so we're living lots of different things, but I really found myself on my yoga mat. I really had to listen to myself, to my mind. I had to start to unwind these patterns, like, why do I think like this? This denial, this self-loathing. I started to connect with my body, which is something that addicts and alcoholics don't do. We want to dumb everything down. We don't want to feel, or we want to feel a certain way. We don't want to feel any emotions and things that don't make us feel good. Memories, things like that, we don't want any of that. So I had to deal with all of that coming up. And this was my magic carpet. This was my safe space. My whole life has blossomed since that crazy day. And I'm 3 years sober now. I'm teaching yoga. I'm traveling the world. I'm actually teaching at several drug and alcohol treatment centers. So I am that lady that I looked up to so many years back. And actually, when I teach at these places now, people always say, you? Whenever I tell them that I'm in recovery, that I was an alcoholic and an addict, they go, you? We don't believe it. And I go, that's what I used to say about my yoga teacher. So really, it's came full circle, and I couldn't be more grateful for this practice. It's literally saved my life. And I just love nothing more than to be able to give the gift of yoga to other people. And we're all in recovery from something, whether it's drugs or alcohol, whether it's unhealthy relationships, food. There's so many things. It could be social media, codependency, just negative self-talk. We get addicted to that, addicted to not being kind to ourselves. There's so much. We're all recovering from something, and there's always a place, there's always something to come closer to, coming closer to wholeness. And I really think that's what this practice is about transformation and just coming home to yourself. I just wanted to tell you a little bit about me, and I hope that resonates with you and some of you. And please reach out if any of you are also in recovery from something, from anything. There's such a wide range, and I feel like whenever we talk about it, then we release the stigma around it, because whatever you try to push down, all the things that you try not to see, all the things that you want to hide, the deeper you push them down, the more that they wind up identifying you. It just becomes too much. So please share your stories with us, and know that all of us here at Yoga TX are here to support, and we love you, and thank you for letting us do what we do. Much love. My heart to yours. Namaste. Your knees here, and sit your hips back. We'll walk our arms out. And your hips may not come all the way down. You may be more like this, and that's fine too. So whatever feels good to you. But walk your fingertips out, so we're opening up underneath this, underneath your armpit.